This is TWiT.
Apple versus Epic. The battle rages on. Epic, of course, the creators of Fortnite, a free game. You will not find an update. They got an update. They sent out an email to everybody saying, hey, we're going to be updating Fortnite with new Marvel characters, but you iPhone folks, you won't be getting it because Apple has yanked our developer permit. They did go to court, Epic, seeking an injunction, a restraining order from a judge in the 9th District of Northern California telling Apple you can't yank our developer permit. The judge said, no, Apple can. You violated contract, but she did do the right thing. Judge Rogers said, you cannot, Apple, revoke the developer permissions for Epic International, a separate arm which does the Unreal Engine, because that would affect a lot of bystanders, people who are not involved in this. It all comes down to Apple's 30% VIG on everything sold in the App Store. This is one I don't know. I'll be honest. I've heard the debate from both sides over and over again. I don't know where I come down on this. And on the one hand, Apple has created an environment everybody wants to be a part of. If you were in a Best Buy selling software, you were giving them a lot more than 30%. That's kind of the norm for distribution. On the other hand, if you're not in the App Store on the iPhone, you can't be installed on the iPhone. So in that respect, that's a monopsony. Apple controls all the buyers. I don't know.
I think the problem is that I think it's the app developers themselves who grant Apple the monopsony, and
often are happy, right, to do it.
I mean, they feel like they have to be on the iOS platform, but there are lots and lots of disgruntled developers, like Epic, like Facebook, like lots and lots of them. If they were to organize and collectively leave the platform, Apple would be stuck with the same problem they had in the 90s. Back in the 90s, most people didn't use Apple operating systems because there were no games.
Right.
And so if, the reason Apple has this monopsony is because developers don't follow their principles. They don't put their money where their mouth is. They complain, they sue, they do all this kind of stuff. But the only thing that's going to get Apple to be more friendly toward developers is when users don't buy iPhones because the games and social networks and other things that they want to use are not on the Apple platform.
Facebook actually had to pull an update to the Facebook app. They were going to introduce this, Facebook Marketplace that allowed influencers and businesses to host virtual events. Because it would be purchased through the iPhone, Facebook said, look, you're going to get a 30% loss on this because Apple's going to take 30%. We just want to let you know you're only going to get 70% of your earnings. Apple said, you can't tell people that. And Facebook was forced to take that information out. Apple says it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Doctor, where do you stand on this one?
This is like the 80,000th time you've had to have this conversation.
It's nonstop, folks, but it's never going to go away until we fix it, right?
Mike already made the example. Apple is just a bully right now. Okay, so either everybody takes their ball and go home at the same time, or Apple's just going to keep slow rolling you. And Apple has a sheer plan of domination, and it's impressive. They're cutting out Intel. Intel's dead in the water. They're embarrassing themselves on all fronts. Then they're going to turn everything into an iPad where you have to get everything through the App Store. You are looking at complete domination. If someone doesn't check them, like a Facebook, a Twitter, a TikTok, like if I was Facebook right now, I would go and buy TikTok and then go to Jack and be like, look, let's just walk off of Apple for like one day. Just shut everything down for a day.
Yeah.
You know how many grandmas and 12-year-olds be jumping out of windows, throwing their phones,
TikTok?
let me get a cheap Samsung for $15. It would happen immediately because
Instagram
right now,
alone, Instagram alone is off, that would be the end of it.
I do have to say, though, Epic is not the perfect poster child for this. It's pretty clear that really what they're not worried about the 30%. What they really want to do is put a store on there, and Apple really won't let them do that, a game store. They want to do a Steam-style game store on iOS, and perhaps in this case, Apple's right because they said, well, we can't, one of the premises of the App Store is we've carefully checked everything on here to make sure it's safe. If somebody else has a store within our store, we can't do that. So that, if Apple's aware of this strategy, maybe they're reasonable. Of course, Apple then twists the knife because all week long they're promoting a Fortnite competitor, PUBG, on the App Store. A new era of PUBG Mobile's coming, featuring an overhaul map and a bold new look. They're saying, well, you don't need to play Fortnite. You can play PlayerUnknown's Battleground. It's still a battle royale. All right, Cory, you have to help me because I cannot figure it out. I don't know whose side I'm on here. Both sides seem to be, working the angles a little bit here. It's clear Epic planned this. They had a movie, a woman throwing her unicorn hammer through the Apple screen and all of that stuff. They knew this was going to be a problem. They actually set it all up. They teed it up and launched it. So they look a little cynical. What's the answer here?
Well, I think you need to tease apart some different issues. So, like, one is this question of whether or not you should be able to choose what software you install on your device, right? So, like, that's not a question about whether, Apple should have the right to decide which software they make available to you. It's a separate question, right? The question of, like, should I be allowed to find someone who makes software and for that person and me to privately agree that I'm going to run their software on a device that I gave Apple $1,000 for, even if Apple doesn't like it. And it's a pretty hard proposition to defend. And, when people, or rather to oppose, and when people do oppose it, it's this weird kind of culty, no true Scotsman argument where they're like, Apple users like not having another store. And I'm like, who do you suppose it is that is trying to do the sideloading if not Apple users, right? It's not like Samsung users are the ones clamoring for the right to sideload on iPhones, right? It's iPhone owners that are doing it. It's just like that right to repair argument with Apple, where they're like, Apple customers love taking their phones to the Genius Bar and they don't want to use an independent repair place. Well, if that were true, we could have 1 million independent repair places and they'd be like the Maytag repair guy. There'd just be like cobwebs and tumbleweeds because no Apple customer would bring them a phone. What they're saying is, if you are the kind of Apple customer who wants to bring your phone to an independent store, you're doing it wrong, and I don't count you as an actual Apple customer. And that's not how private property works, right?
So Google,
well, just to be clear,
go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Just to be clear about what this means, and you got it exactly right, that you pull the thread out of the sweater and you end up with that bare fact. Apple is both a monopoly and a monopsony.
Right.
That's why they're so successful. So this is the dynamic that makes them a monopoly. Nobody can install another operating system on their phones. They have they have the most perfect monopoly in history on Apple hardware, on all of their devices.
Or even a store.
Even an alternate store.
Right.
Right? Yeah,
yes.
That's the thing.
Right.
And, Apple has this argument that we use this power that we've accrued to ourselves wisely, right? We only use it to make sure that bad things aren't in there and only good things are in there. And we know that, like, on the one hand, they just sometimes make bad judgments. So we can remember when they pulled a dictionary because it had swear words, the years they spent blocking apps that told you whenever an American drone killed a civilian overseas. The time they blocked an app or a book rather by Seth Godin because it had a link to Amazon in the book. It was a book about how to do digital publishing, and it linked to Amazon. So sometimes their judgment isn't very good, and one of the things that helps people have better judgment is the risk that if they make bad judgment, people might go somewhere else, right? Like that is a thing that disciplines our conduct. It's like anyone who's ever raised a kid with a partner knows that sometimes if they don't like your answer, they'll go and ask your wife or husband or partner for a different answer.
It's called splitting, yeah.
Yeah,
Apple is like the Chinese Communist Party. They say that our censorship protects you from pornography, terrorism, and democracy.
Well,
and Winnie the Pooh.
It's actually it's sharper than that, because when the Chinese government ordered Apple to use that power that they'd accrued to themselves to remove all working VPNs from the App Store, so that the Chinese government could spy on their own people at a moment in which they had just put 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps, and a human rights tribunal had upheld the conclusion that they were arresting Falun Gong members to harvest their organs. Apple did it, right? So Apple's statement that we only use this power to keep you safe is not true.
And they demanded 30% on the organ sales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 30% of a kidney. So, you know, it's like we only do this to keep you safe or to make ourselves money. Sometimes making ourselves money and keeping you safe is on the same side. But when it's not, we're going to take the money deal. And,
I have to point out, though, that Google offers sideloads on Android.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Sweeney, when they first put Fortnite on Android, said, all right, well, we don't want to give them 30% of our downloadable content revenue, so we're going to make you sideload it. And instantly there was a problem. There was malware on, there was a malicious download instead of the actual download. They fixed that. After a while, Epic said, yeah, you know what? It's better in the Google Play Store, so we're going to put it in the Google Play Store. Now, that hasn't stopped Epic from also suing Google over the 30% VIG they take on the store. So they have the same problem with Google, and Google allows what you just said Apple should allow.
So yeah, remember when I said this is multiple issues. So one is this idea about whether you as the owner of a device should be allowed to decide what to do with it, even if the manufacturer doesn't like it. And it's a pretty hard push to say, no, you should really arrange your affairs to benefit shareholders,
right?
Not yourself. You
right.
owe it to HP to only buy first-party ink,
right?
You know, you should only use Keurig K-Cup cups in your K-Cup coffee machine.
It's consumer hostile. It's customer hostile.
It's stupid, right? And it's offensive. And then there's a separate legal question, which is very closely related, which is Section 12.1 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is a law that makes it a felony to provide a tool to jailbreak DRM. And it makes it a felony punishable by a 5-year prison sentence and a $500,000 fine. And it does so even when there's no copyright infringement. And so this is where you start to see how this attitude of wanting to chickenize your customers and the law start to come together, because lots of vendors have figured out that if you design a device so that using it in ways that displease shareholders requires that you bypass DRM, then you can have felony contempt of business model, right? Like doing a thing the shareholders don't like. In order to do it, you have to break the DRM. To break the DRM, you commit a crime. Therefore, displeasing the shareholders is a crime. And that's why you see like Abbott Labs going after glucose monitors that people with diabetes use to make a closed loop with their insulin pumps. So that they can automatically dose themselves with insulin. And Abbott Labs is like, you have to use our solution for that. You can't use your solution. And of course, their solution requires that you buy their insulin pump too. They're like chickenizing your organs, right? and it's how you see Medtronic doing this with ventilators, right? There's hundreds of broken ventilators. There's a massive ventilator shortage. They use DRM that prevents you from taking a working screen from a dead ventilator and putting it in a working ventilator with a dead screen. You need a little tool that synchronizes the two of them. It just does a key handshake. And they won't make that tool available to independent repair people to just buy junk ones on eBay, fix them, and get them into hospitals to save people's lives. And right now, the way that those technicians do that job is there's a guy in Poland who did a Medtronic training course where they gave him a key generator, which he never gave back. He embeds it in hardware and puts it in like old guitar pedals and mails them to U.S. technicians so that they can fix ventilators and get them back in the market, right?
God.
A kind of de-chickenization process.
It's a de-chickenization involving guitar pedals.
Speaking as a cyberpunk author, it wasn't a suggestion, people. It was a warning, right? So that's the second issue, right? Like that Apple is abusing this, that they developed the mechanism for abusing it. They perfected it, and it has spread. It's an epidemic in every industry now. It's what's in tractors and cars, coffee makers, everything.
But people put up with it. We're happy about it. Why is that?
Well, I don't think we are happy with it, or people wouldn't be trying to fix their ventilators.
Yeah.
The same people who are benefiting from this, the shareholders, the companies, et cetera, are the ones who buy government, and the government are the ones who make the rules. And if you look at even the regulatory regime within the U.S. government, it's all packed with current or former members of the industries they're supposed to be regulating. So it all boils down to money and politics. That's where this originates. It doesn't matter if the public likes it or doesn't like it. What matters is that the people who make the rules depend on the people who benefit from this kind of chickenization.